Welcome to Lost at 3 a.m. Put your phone down, close your eyes, and let this be the last video you hear tonight. Before the Planet Express ship, before Slurm, Hypnotoad, and robot uprisings, there was just a guy, a pizza delivery boy in 1999, who fell into a cryogenic pod by accident and woke up 1,000 years later in a world that made even less sense than the one he left behind. This is Futurama, a sci-fi comedy that could have easily been just another cartoon, but instead became something much more. Created by Matt Groening after the success of The Simpsons, Futurama took a simple premise and quietly built one of the most heartfelt, strange, and unexpectedly emotional shows on television. It's about aliens and robots and ridiculous future tech, but it's also about loneliness, about starting over, about people who don't quite fit anywhere, but somehow find each other anyway. Tonight, we're stepping into that world. We'll look at how the show began, the characters that made it matter, and the quiet, powerful moments that snuck up on you when you least expected it. So close your eyes. Picture New York stretching out over the ruins of the old one, a spaceship coasting across the skyline, and a guy from the 20th century just trying to figure out how to belong in the 31st. This is Futurama, and this is where it starts. The story starts with a guy named Fry, a nobody, really. 25 years old, lonely, stuck in a dead-end job, delivering pizzas on New Year's Eve while the rest of the world is celebrating. He's not special, not destined, he's just there. And then, in the final seconds of 1999, he falls into a cryogenic freezer. By the time he wakes up, it's the year 3000. Everything he's ever known is gone. His family, his friends, his city, the entire planet looks different. The people are different. There are aliens, robots, flying cars, and vending machines with attitudes. He's in the future, but he's still the same guy who never really had a plan. And that's the beauty of Futurama. It takes a character who had nothing going for him, gives him a clean slate, and still lets him be exactly who he is. Fry doesn't become a genius or a hero. He doesn't suddenly find his purpose. He just starts over, slowly. He wanders through this strange, shiny world. He meets a one-eyed spaceship captain named Leela, a foul-mouthed robot named Bender, a crew of absolute misfits at a delivery company that mostly just crashes into things. And somehow, in the middle of all the chaos, Fry finds something he never had before. People who don't expect him to be more than he is. The future in Futurama is ridiculous, loud, over the top, and filled with bureaucratic nonsense. But underneath all of that, it's a show about second chances. Fry didn't choose to be frozen. He didn't ask to lose everything. But now that he has, he gets to rebuild, not as someone better, just as someone honest. And that's what made the premise work. Not the robots or the laser guns or the talking heads in jars, but the idea that maybe, no matter how far the world moves on without you, you can still find a place in it. 1,000 years too late, Fry finally wakes up, and somehow it's exactly when he needed to. By the time Futurama was created, Matt Groening had already changed television once. The Simpsons was everywhere. An animated sitcom that turned into a global empire. But after a decade in Springfield, Groening wanted something different, something bigger. Not just a new show, but a new world. He started sketching ideas for a sci-fi comedy, cities floating in the sky, a robot with no filter, a delivery crew dropping off packages to alien worlds, and at the center of it all, a guy who didn't belong in the future, but maybe never belonged in the past either. Groening partnered with David X. Cohen, a Simpsons writer with a background in physics and a deep love for science fiction. Together, they didn't just want to spoof the genre, they wanted to build something that felt real underneath the absurdity. A functioning, lived-in future with rules, logic, and just enough nonsense to keep it all funny. They pitched it to Fox, who said yes, and then immediately got nervous. The show was dense, weird, philosophical in places. It had a one-eyed main character, a depressed robot, and a tone that drifted between slapstick and heartbreak. There were background gags in alien languages, math jokes, storylines about death, memory, and loneliness. This wasn't The Simpsons in space. It was something stranger, more ambitious. A cartoon with jokes for kids and theorems for people with PhDs. The network didn't always understand what they were making, and later, that tension would lead to cancellations, reshuffles, and long stretches where Futurama disappeared completely. But in the beginning, there was just that simple idea. A man wakes up in the year 3000 and nothing makes sense. And somehow, it all came together. A sci-fi comedy with heart, a crew that felt like a family, and a future that looked ridiculous, but somehow made us feel more human. That's how Futurama was born. And even now, decades later, it still doesn't feel like anything else on TV. Every show needs a strong cast of characters, but Futurama doesn't give you a group of heroes. It gives you a crew that barely holds it together. At the center is Fry, a delivery boy from the past who doesn't understand the future and doesn't try to. He's lazy, impulsive, a little clueless, but there's something sweet about him. He means well. He cares. And for someone who lost everything, he holds on to hope like it's the one thing he brought with him. Then there's Leela, the one who keeps things from falling apart. She's smart, capable, and constantly frustrated that no one around her seems to be taking anything seriously. But underneath all that strength is someone who's spent her life feeling alone, convinced she's the last of her kind, always searching for where she belongs. She acts like the adult in the room, but deep down, she wants what everyone else wants: connection. And then there's Bender, a robot designed to bend steel, who mostly just drinks, steals, and makes things worse. He's loud, selfish, and somehow still completely lovable. Bender is all ego, but sometimes, when no one's looking, he surprises you. Because buried under all that attitude is a machine who maybe, just maybe, wants to be good, or at least less terrible. The rest of the Planet Express crew rounds out the chaos. Professor Farnsworth, Fry's distant descendant, is part genius, part senile madman. His inventions are usually life-threatening, and his moral compass tends to wobble. He's as likely to send his crew into a black hole as he is to forget why he called a meeting in the first place. There's Amy, the intern who doesn't need the job. She's clumsy, privileged, and always trying to prove she's more than just the rich kid tagging along. She fails a lot, but she's trying. Hermes, the bureaucrat, is obsessed with rules, forms, and efficiency. Somehow, that makes him the most stable person in the room. And then there's Zoidberg, the doctor who knows nothing about human anatomy, is perpetually broke, and mostly just wants someone to invite him to lunch. None of them really fit. Not in society, not in their roles, not even with each other most of the time. But that's what makes them feel real. Because Futurama isn't about a perfect crew doing heroic things. It's about a bunch of flawed, lonely people, humans, aliens, robots, trying to figure out how to get through the day without blowing anything up. And somehow, along the way, they become a family, a weird one. But a family all the same. It might not seem like it, but Futurama is one of the smartest shows ever made. Not just in the witty dialogue sense, but in the literal, academic, published in peer-reviewed journals kind of way. That's because behind the talking robots and exploding spaceships, the show was quietly written by a team of science nerds, mathematicians, physicists, people with advanced degrees in things most of us never got past in high school. And they didn't just use their knowledge as window dressing, they built it into the show. One of the writers, David X. Cohen, had a physics degree from Harvard. Another had a PhD in applied mathematics. These weren't just comedy writers, they were people who could explain quantum mechanics and write a joke about a robot union in the same sentence. And if you were paying attention, you'd start to notice it. The background equations, the logic behind the time travel, the alien languages that could actually be translated, the binary jokes that were genuinely accurate. There's an episode where they casually introduce an entirely new mathematical theorem just to resolve a mind-switching plot. That wasn't a gag, it was real math, invented by the writing staff, later published. The show never demanded that you notice these things, but if you did, they were there, quiet, clever, hidden just beneath the surface of the chaos. And that's what makes Futurama feel so unique. It's not just funny, it respects its own world. It doesn't break the rules, it builds them, even when those rules involve robots powered by alcohol and bureaucratic space slugs. Because behind every ridiculous premise, there's a strange sort of logic, and somehow that logic makes the future feel just a little more believable. In a way, it's kind of comforting. The idea that even a show this strange still follows a set of rules, still holds on to structure, even if that structure involves a lobster doctor who thinks Earthlings have multiple hearts. It's easy to think of Futurama as a show that was always around, quietly brilliant, tucked between reruns of The Simpsons and Family Guy. But the truth is, Futurama spent most of its life on the edge of extinction. The show premiered in 1999 with high hopes. Matt Groening's name carried weight and the pilot landed strong. But almost immediately, the network didn't know what to do with it. Time slots changed constantly. Episodes were aired out of order, and before the first few seasons had even found their rhythm, Fox started pulling the plug. By 2003, Futurama was gone, cancelled, not with a dramatic finale or a proper send-off, just quietly shuffled off the schedule. But the fans never stopped watching. Reruns on Adult Swim built a new audience. DVD sales were strong. Online forums lit up with people quoting Zoidberg and defending Bender. It wasn't loud, but it was loyal. And then something rare happened. In 2007, Futurama came back, not as a full series, but as a set of 4 feature-length movies. It was strange, but it worked, and those movies eventually led to a full revival on Comedy Central. The show was reborn with new episodes, a slightly different tone, and a new home. It didn't stay there forever. After a few more seasons, the show ended again. This time, it got to say goodbye properly, with meanwhile, a quiet, thoughtful final episode that didn't erase the past or tie everything up, but gave the characters a moment of peace, a moment to pause. Then, in true Futurama fashion, it came back again. In 2023, it returned once more. New episodes, same voices, same heart. Another strange, unexpected second chance. Maybe third, maybe fourth. It's hard to count at this point. But that's kind of the story of Futurama, a show that never quite fit where it was placed. That got cancelled, revived, forgotten, and rediscovered, over and over again. And each time, it quietly proved that something doesn't have to be loud or flashy to matter. It just has to mean something to the people who keep showing up for it. And Futurama always had people showing up, even when the networks didn't. One of the reasons Futurama feels so rich, so weirdly alive, is because it's packed with little things most people never notice. Background jokes, alien text, references that reward you 3 seasons later without ever pointing to themselves. It's not just a show, it's a puzzle that never quite finishes solving itself. Start with the alien languages. There isn't just one. There are 2 fully developed alphabets that appear in signs, graffiti, and blinking lights across New York. They're real, translatable, and when fans crack them, the writers quietly made a harder version just to keep things interesting. Then there's the math, literal math. In one episode, a background chalkboard casually includes a working proof that references Fermat's last theorem, except it's written in base 36. Most viewers never caught it, but for the ones who did, it was a secret handshake. The show also plays long. There are callbacks buried so deep you'd only catch them if you were paying attention across seasons. A casual joke about Leela's parents in one episode turns into a major reveal in another. A piece of delivery company paperwork foreshadows plot twists before they ever happen. Even Bender's serial number is a reference to a binary joke that actually checks out if you run the math. And then there's the world itself. Strange, layered, strangely consistent. The streets of New York, the laws of robot hell, the endless bureaucracy of dupe. Every planet, every species, every government agency has a logic to it. A weird cartoon logic, sure, but logic all the same. You can re-watch Futurama 10 times and still catch something new. A headline in the background, a whispered line that turns out to be a callback, a pun that's been sitting there for years, quietly waiting for you to notice. And none of it feels forced. The show never stops to explain its own cleverness. It just lets the world exist, big, messy, and full of details for the people who feel like sticking around. That's what makes Futurama so satisfying. It's not just funny, it's not just smart. It trusts you to look closer. And when you do, it always has one more thing to show you. For a show about robots, aliens, and time-traveling delivery boys, Futurama has an unusual habit of breaking your heart. Not loudly, not often, but when it does, it stays with you. You don't expect it, because the show is so good at being funny. It gives you dumb jokes about space worms and robot wrestling, and then suddenly, without warning, it hits you with something quiet, something personal. The most famous example is Jurassic Park. Fry finds the fossilized remains of his dog, Seymour, back from the 20th century. The episode is light at first. There's a clone plot, a few gags, the usual detours. But then, right at the end, there's no twist, no reset, just a flashback. Seymour waiting in front of the pizza place. Days turn into years. The dog never moves, the song plays, and then, silence. It's one of the most devastating endings to an animated episode ever made, and it barely says a word. Then there's the luck of the Fryrish. Fry spends the episode convinced his brother stole his identity after he disappeared. He's angry, hurt, convinced he was forgotten. But in the last few minutes, he finds out the truth, that his brother named his son after him, that Fry was remembered, not as a joke, but as a hero. The music swells, the emotion hits, and suddenly, it's not about the future anymore. It's about loss and legacy, and how people hold on to us even after we're gone. Other episodes do it in smaller ways. A story about Leela's childhood turns into a reveal about her parents and all the ways they quietly stayed in her life, even when she didn't know it. A throwaway gag about time travel becomes a meditation on being stuck in the wrong moment forever. Even Bender, the loudest, most selfish character in the show, has moments where he's lonely, vulnerable, just trying to be liked. Futurama never gets sentimental for long. That's not its style, but it knows how to pause, just long enough for something real to slip through. A look, a line, a moment that lingers longer than a joke ever could. That's what makes it special. It doesn't need to be heavy. It just knows that behind every ridiculous adventure, someone might be feeling something they don't know how to say. And somehow, this strange little cartoon finds the words. It never got the ratings of The Simpsons, never had the hype of Family Guy, and yet, Futurama stuck, quietly, consistently, in its own strange corner of pop culture. It endured. Part of that is timing. It came out at a moment when animation was changing, when adult cartoons were becoming more than punchlines. But Futurama didn't just lean into adult humor, it leaned into everything. Science fiction, philosophy, satire, sincerity. It wasn't trying to follow a trend, it was trying to build a universe, and it did. And the people who found it, they stayed. Maybe because it was funny, maybe because it was smart, or maybe because it somehow understood what it felt like to be a little lost, to not quite fit. Even in a world filled with aliens and time machines and bureaucratic monsters. It also helped that the writing was ahead of its time. Literally, a lot of the jokes landed better years later. The tech predictions, the commentary on media, the way it handled AI and ethics and the future of humanity, all through the lens of a cartoon where robots swear and heads float in jars. It influenced other shows too. You can feel Futurama in everything from Rick and Morty to BoJack Horseman. That balance of absurdity and sadness, that willingness to be clever without being smug, emotional without being soft. And now, after being cancelled, revived, and cancelled again, Futurama still refuses to stay gone. New seasons, new stories, but the same heart underneath. It's not trying to chase the moment, it's just doing what it always did, telling smart, weird, surprisingly emotional stories in a universe that shouldn't make sense, but somehow does. That's the legacy. Not just a good sci-fi cartoon, but a show that built something lasting, something full of heart, hidden math jokes, and the quiet, comforting idea that even in the year 3000, nobody really has it figured out. For a show set 1,000 years in the future, Futurama has always felt strangely familiar. It's not the flying cars or the robot uprisings or the vending machines that flirt with you. It's the people, the feeling, the quiet sense that even in the strangest possible version of tomorrow, someone out there is still just trying to get through the day. Fry never becomes a hero. Leela never becomes perfect. Bender never learns to behave. But they keep going. They keep showing up. And somewhere in that mess of delivery routes and space battles and government forms in triplicate, there's something that feels real. Maybe that's why the show has lasted. Not because of how clever it is, which it is, or how many jokes it can fit into a minute, but because, underneath everything, Futurama cares about its characters. It gives them space to be messy, to make mistakes, to change a little, or not at all. And even when the world around them doesn't make sense, the connections do. A delivery boy who never really grew up, a one-eyed captain who keeps everyone alive, a robot who pretends not to care. Somehow, that's enough. The future in Futurama is full of chaos. It always has been. But the show never gives up on the idea that something good can still come out of it. That even the most hopeless people can find a place to belong. That even after 1,000 years, you can still fall in love, still screw things up, still sit with your friends at the end of a long day and eat takeout. It's not just a show about the future. It's a show about feeling lost and building something anyway. And that's why, all these years later, it still feels like home. Thanks for spending your night with Lost at 3 a.m. Sweet dreams, and we'll see you next time.